Coming to you from Michigan, USA. And listened to by people all over the planet. Get ready to be safe and sound with Sean Sparkman.
Never take your eyes off your opponent, even when you bow.
Welcome to the Safe and Sound podcast. I'm your host, Sean Sparkman. I'm really excited today to be bringing to you Kris Miller. You have such an interesting story, and I know this is going to be a really deep topic today, so I'm excited about it, but can you tell people a little bit about who you are and what brought you to where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kris Miller, and I am the founder of On a Dragonfly's Wings, which is a not-for-profit organization built around educating on mental health, mental illness, and suicide prevention. And we offer events and programs and different things for youth-based. My story really begins June 20th of 2019. My 15-year-old son died by suicide. He had suffered from anxiety and depression for several years, and the pain eventually just became too much. And he took his own life in our home. And from there, I really took that pain and grief and started just posting about it. Just all of my feelings, things about mental health and what it does to your brain and the things that it tells you that aren't true but you believe. And I started talking a little bit about suicide prevention, but it was mostly just my grief. And I had a friend, an acquaintance actually. She was a business friend, and she asked me out for lunch one day, kind of random. So I said, okay. We went to lunch, and she said, I think you have more to say, and I would like to help you tell the world about your son. My son's name is Nikolai. Tell the world about your son, tell the world about your grief, tell the world about how we can help break the stigma. And so with her help, her name is Julie, and she set up all the media platforms for me, website, social media, everything. And it started off as just a blog, and it was a blog of my grief. It was every feeling that I had, and I just put it out there because I figured if I'm feeling it, somebody else is feeling it as well.
And that must have been actually helpful for you, right? An outlet?
Super therapeutic. I've always been a writer. That's kind of my thing. I journal a lot, and that's how I get my feelings out. So it was definitely my therapy as well, to just express everything I was feeling out to the world and to be heard and to be seen.
Well, it makes sense since you said you're a writer. We're in the library today. She has a beautiful garden, which there's going to be some photos that you can check of it down in the link below and at the beginning of the show here. And you had mentioned when we were standing here that you love the crack of a book. Yes. So being a writer, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes. English was always my favorite subject in school. I'm a heavy reader. I love reading, and I will read anything. Nonfiction, fiction, doesn't matter. You put it in front of me, I'm going to read it. And so writing, I guess, just kind of came along with that.
Well, quick aside, because I love books and I'm a reader too. I know she ribbed me a little bit because I'm the digital reader. I prefer like my phone or an iPad, just convenience. But
not the same.
I've always loved paperback books too. I do have a good collection. But just out of curiosity, what would you say is one of your top one or two books?
Oh gosh, To Kill a Mockingbird. I know that sounds cliche. But I read it in 9th grade for the first time, and I've probably read it 4 times since then.
Wow.
And that's probably one of my top favorite books.
Why is that one of your favorites? Curious, because I'm pretty sure most people have probably read that
probably
at some
read
point
it
or done a book report.
Required reading, right?
Yeah.
There's just something about it. It's just so, there's so much wrapped up in one little book, family and community, and It's just, I don't know, there's just something about it. It just speaks to me in a different way.
Okay.
So I really, really like that one.
So going back to, you're talking about being a writer and in relation to the subject of Nikolai and On a Dragonfly's Wings. So where were you taking that?
So once I got the blog started, then it really became, there is more to this story, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, his death was sudden, but what led up to it wasn't. And I had also started doing some speaking at suicide prevention trainings. And as I was sitting through some of those trainings initially, I was learning. So I was learning what were some of those signs that maybe I missed. Yeah. And realizing that, you know, if I was living and breathing it and I missed things and there's so much more I didn't know, how does everybody else know all of this? Right. So that's really the turning point where I decided we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about mental illness. It's extremely stigmatized. Yeah. You know, we call these people crazy, or, you know, it's just, you know, it's a brain disease. It's no different than if you break a bone, you get cancer, you treat it medically. Right. This is a disease of the brain. We still need to study it, and there's still work that needs to be done, but we still need to take care of it just like we would any other disease. How
long was Nikolai struggling?
I really, you know, he was diagnosed with ADHD when he was in second grade. And you could see a lot of his impulsiveness coming out of that, a lot of the anxiety coming out of that, really at a very early age. And what we are finding now is that is happening with kids. They are very anxiety ridden. There's a lot of trauma in the world. And
that's not something that anybody talks about.
No. And they're absorbing all of this, right? And they're really little, and they don't know what to do with those feelings. Those are really big feelings for little kids, and they don't know what to do with that. So he really, you know, I think he struggled a little bit most of his life, but he was absolutely the funniest, most joyful child you would ever meet. Like, everybody loved him. He walked into a room and just filled it with light. And about middle school, 7th grade, is really when we started to see his light start to go out a little bit. Some darkness started to come in. He became very depressed. He started to withdraw from friends. By 8th grade, he had quit all sports. The only thing he stuck to was orchestra, of all things, because he hated to practice. So that's funny. There was something about, he's always had a love for music, and he actually is a very talented singer, and he played the viola in orchestra, and that was really the one thing that he hung on to. But in 8th grade, he really started to spiral. So he quit all of his sports. He started to distance himself from friends, even from family. He spent a lot of time just in his room by himself. He would read the same books over and over and over and over again. He was a big reader as well. And his grades were slipping. He was doing terrible in school, to the point of pretty much failing out, and that was not him. Right. So, you know, there were a lot of things going on, and as parents, you know, we talked to the school teachers, we talked to his counselor, he, you know, met with a social worker on a pretty regular basis in middle school. He had some really great teachers that were super communicative with us. We found him a therapist, so he was seeing a therapist on the side. He was on medication. So as parents, we think we're doing all the right things, right? You know, you're following the process, you're following the steps of all the things you think you're supposed to do. And by 9th grade, it was very much out of control. And he had almost completely switched personalities, and he had really completely lost his joy. And very disrespectful, which is not him. He was always my please and thank you child. Very disrespectful to teachers, and it just became very overwhelming. And my oldest son had kind of noticed, they were really, really good friends. They were very close. They shared a lot of the same common likes and dislikes. And he had come to me and said, we have to do something. Something is not right, and this is not going to end well. And I think as a parent, again, because we don't talk about mental health, and so we don't talk about depression, and we don't talk about anxiety, and we think
that's for adults, much less kids.
Right. And you think, oh my gosh, he's 8th, 9th grade, right? Hormones through the roof. Yeah. I mean, puberty, there's all kinds of crazy things going on. And you convince yourself that you can make things right, that things will be okay, and your child would never take their own life. Your child would never go that route, right? Because they know how loved they are. They know how supported they are. And 2 weeks before he died, him and I went for a walk with the dog. And on that walk, I said to him, how can I help you? I feel like you've lost your joy, and I want to help you find it. And he said, I don't know how. And that was one of those conversations that we probably should have had a little bit more of. We should have talked a little bit more about that, what he said. And in the end, it just wasn't enough. And 2 weeks later, he took his own life. And, that's really hard. And as a parent, you look back on a lot of that, and there's the weight of guilt. And
I can only imagine.
The things that you coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? But you didn't. So, so I guess then when I started going through these suicide trainings and doing, presentations, and realizing, okay, you only know what you know at the time that you know it, right?
Right.
So now we need to educate parents so that they know, so that they have the information so they can do differently than what they were doing before.
So can I ask a really tough question, which
Absolutely.
is it's part of what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Is if you had to go back, or you're telling people like, I have 2 young kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And if I run into this situation with mine, what is the right route to go? I mean, I know there's no one good answer, but what are some of the things that, we could do as parents to make an impact?
First and foremost, open conversations. I mean, talking about your feelings all the time. We don't talk enough about that, right? We're supposed to stuff them down deep and, put on a brave face and be all awesome. And
that seems to be part of our culture, especially nowadays. And I always wonder, just seeing all the stories and the technology that we have, that we're all super connected. I mean, my business is done, through technology, which is an amazing thing. But at the same time, I wonder, especially for kids, that interconnectedness. Is that really healthy and actually good? Because I know it brings a lot of good, but does it also lead to too much? They see too much, they learn too much at too young of an age.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. I think there's a lot of good that can be done through social media. There's some really great apps out there that really help kids feel and learn how to set up their own toolbox of coping mechanisms, I like to say. But there's a lot of also the negative, right? Especially at the teenage level, you've got, all these kids who go out on social media and maybe aren't so nice.
Right.
Or even just self-esteem within yourself. You look at all of these, the quarterback of the football team. Oh my gosh, they're so cool. I wish I could.
That's what I was kind of getting to, is the Instagram, the Facebook, the you were saying, even in day-to-day life, oh, here's the perfect image. Like, I'm so happy, things are going good. Like, that's all we're allowed to talk about, and that's what social media puts, right?
Yeah.
Everything on social media, I mean, mine included, you look at my profile picture, and, it's a beautiful picture of my wife and my kids and I. And it doesn't show, though, any of the actual interpersonal things of, we're real people and we have our struggles just like everybody else.
Yep.
My kid does this and I don't know how to handle it, or my wife and I have a fight, whatever it might be. And I wonder if for kids that seeing that, just all day long, here's all the perfect, and they're not seeing anything else, and they get this unrealistic expectation that
absolutely they do.
We have to meet that somehow, which nobody can, right?
No, we as adults look at things the same way, right?
Yeah.
We look at things and be like, wow, like that person's doing great, I like to call social media the highlight reel.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good description.
Because really that's what it is. It's the highlight reel of life, right? You're not going to go out and share your dirty laundry, the things that, maybe are the yuckiness in the world,
right.
That make you feel bad. And my personal page, I've tried to actually do that. I try to share a lot of the yuck in my life, because I feel like the more we talk openly about the yuck in our life, the more human we become.
I agree 100%. And that's part of why we had talked about a little bit ahead of time, like, why am I doing the podcast? And it's to get people like you, and just in general, that openness, that realness that we really, I think, crave. Everybody craves it. What we want in life is real connectedness and relationships, and you don't get that without being open and raw and honest. And that's really why I'm doing this. And I love that we're able to have this conversation today.
Yeah.
And just for everybody that's listening or watching, this is really the first conversation that Kris and I have had, other than a 5-10 minute phone call.
Yep.
So it's really amazing to hear your story, and I really do appreciate what you're doing.
Of course, yeah. It's, I really feel, which is really why my organization focuses on youth, 5 to 18. First of all, Nikolai was 15, so he's right in that age bracket. But I really feel like the younger that we can connect with our kids and start teaching them coping mechanisms. So when they have really big emotions and I don't know what to do with them, we as parents can now sit down and say, okay, what tool in your toolbox can we pull out to help with this today? So it's teaching parents and kids how to get through some of those big feelings, because we always say, when kids act out, when they, start throwing things or kicking and screaming or throwing a tantrum, it's usually something bigger than what we think. There's something else going on in the back of their head that they're upset about. So it may not be, that they're being forced to go to bed at 8 o'clock and they don't want to. It might be, I really missed my mommy today and I want to snuggle more. So
that's interesting, because we deal with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old on a day-to-day basis.
A lot of big emotions.
Oh, there's all the emotion. I joke and I talk about my son because he's reading at a 2nd grade level. He does all of the basic math, like 12 times 12 equals, all that type of stuff. So he's very intelligent, and it leads to, like, he has this, like, understanding mentally of knowing a lot of things that at his age most kids don't know, but at the same time he still has all those same emotions and emotional capability that hasn't progressed outside of being a 3-year-old. So we talk about his big emotions all the time. So I want to learn a little bit more about what are these coping mechanisms, just for myself, so that I can teach him tools, because we're trying all the time to teach him some kind of tool. Like Daniel Tiger is the offshoot of Mr. Rogers. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I don't.
Yeah, so Daniel Tiger is the cartoon version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Okay.
And so it's all the same values distilled into a cartoon. So they teach a lot of, like, okay, here's all these feelings and emotions, and how do we deal with them? And one of them's like, count to 5, take a deep breath, belly breathe, that kind of thing. So what else is there? Because just for those listening, if you don't have young kids anymore and you're an adult, or like my clientele for my business are typically over the age of 50. So for those people, these same coping mechanisms work for adults too, right?
Absolutely. So breathing is a big one. and especially with little kids. So there's actually an exercise called a figure eight. So you draw a giant figure eight and you have your kids trace the figure eight very slowly. And as they do it, they breathe in and then they breathe out. But it's very, it reminds them that we're calming down, we're learning how to breathe. So it's sort of the count to 10, just in a different format.
I like that because it gets the sensory of another portion of your body involved.
Yes, yeah. So that's a big one that we teach. I do a lot with glitter jars. Glitter jars are great. They're super easy to make.
We just did one of those recently.
Did you?
It wasn't for this though, so what do you do with them?
So a lot of times when you do it, it's another calming exercise. So as they turn the jar over and they watch the glitter fall, it's calming them down. And a lot of times I like to have them think about things that they're grateful for. So today I was grateful for my morning coffee on my deck in the sunshine. But focusing on something that's really positive while they're calming down. There's also, again, the inhale, the exhale with the glitter jar. Another big piece, journaling, drawing, art therapy is amazing for kids, especially just to draw out their feelings and what's going on. That's a huge one. And
so
then,
is it okay for adults to have a glitter jar?
Yes, I have a glitter jar. My favorite color is pink, so mine is hot pink glitter. Yes, it is absolutely acceptable. For adults too, journaling is a big one. A lot of art therapy, crafts. I personally do adult coloring books. So
cool. My wife has a bunch of those.
There
She's
you
done
go.
That for a long time.
It's very calming. It's very soothing. So there's a lot of that. Meditating, yoga. I know everyone says meditating, bah humbug, right?
Yeah.
Don't knock it till you try it. It's actually, and it does it. You can do it 5 minutes, 15 minutes.
There's a ton of apps now too.
There's a ton of apps out there.
That are like a lot of them are free, some are paid for, but
yes.
Yeah, they take you through guided meditations. I've done quite a few of those myself.
There's so many, and if you can I like to end my day with it, just because it's a really great way to send myself off to sleepy time, right? So just kind of relaxes your brain so that, a lot of times as adults, right, we have all this stuff sitting here. And then when we go to sleep, that's when our brain hey, what do you think about this and this and this and this? So meditating right before bed, I think is a really great habit to get into, just to try and calm your brain down a little bit so that you can rest easy.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different, movement is huge. I'm a CrossFitter. I also teach a Fit Club class at a studio. So movement is also key, and
there's a lot of science, and I mean, one of my friends that I just did a podcast with, he talks about movement, but
yes.
I don't even think we mentioned this on that show. Just the science of exercise and how it regulates your hormones in your brain in general.
Absolutely.
It's a huge thing, and being a martial artist, I have a black belt in karate, and in karate you learn these things called kata. And what kata truly is, a lot of people look at it and they say, oh, these guys are throwing out all these attacks and they're blocking, and it's like this movement of just you by yourself, but it's actually its own guided meditation.
Yep.
And there's a lot of kata that involve learning how to breathe properly through exercise.
That's
so
amazing.
For me, a lot of times if I'm having a point where I'm like, look, I got to change my state, if I'm angry or I'm upset or whatever it may be, I'll go through a kata of some kind, or just even a breathing exercise, which involves some type of movement, at least for me, because I have a really hard time doing the sit there and do nothing.
Same.
It's not my thing. So I need to add in some movement to it to be able to really actually do a meditation.
Yeah. No, I always say the best therapy is lifting a really heavy barbell and throwing it down on the ground. So for me, that's very therapeutic. But yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to be big movements.
Yeah.
You know, it can be very small movements. It can just be walking the dog. It can be, you know, just spending some just quiet time. But yeah, movement I think is huge and very underrated.
So let's talk a little bit more about On a Dragonfly's Wings. That's your company. You said
Mm-hmm.
you're a nonprofit.
Yep.
So what is it exactly that you guys are doing, like say on a day-to-day basis to make an impact?
So right now, we just became a 501c3 in February of this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Valentine's Day, actually.
Oh,
ironically,
cool.
sort of weird. It's the day that I got the IRS letter. But
A good IRS letter.
yeah, not a bad IRS letter, the good kind, yes. So really what we do, especially like right now, so we're getting ready to gear up for kids going back to school. So everything that we've been doing has really been on social media, and it's been giving our parents ideas on how to help their kids start a good school year off. But it can be, I mean, we host different fundraising events. We just had the Walk for Hope in Clarkston. That was for families that could come out and help support mental health and suicide prevention. And we had a rock painting activity. We had an origami. It was really, really cool. This mom came out and she helped kids learn how to do origami, very simple ones.
I used to know how to do the swan once upon a time.
It was pretty cool. Like she did a baby Yoda that was like amazing.
Baby Yoda.
I know.
Oh, I'm gonna have to pick up origami again.
It was pretty intense. I'm not gonna pretend I know how to do that. And we had therapy dogs from Clarkston School District came out. So everything that we do is youth family based. We're going to have another really big event coming up again the end of January. We had it this last January as well. We partnered with Waterford Parks and Rec, and it was a huge event. And we literally picked like we did worry boxes, we did glitter jars, we did rock painting, we did a movement station.
Cool.
Yeah, and we had little refreshments, and we had resources. We had the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention came out, and Common Ground, and National Alliance for Mental Health, they came out as well and set up a table. So it's all about just talking openly as much as we possibly can about mental health, mental illness, and suicide prevention. What does that look like? And giving them the resources. So if their child is struggling, or they're starting to notice that, you know, maybe their kid is a little off, you know, having a few more bad days than what they were or what they should be. Mm-hmm. You know, it gives them some conversation starters. Again, I can't say it enough. Talk. It's all about really having open and very real and honest conversations. You know, I've talked to families where, you know, I'll say, well, are they suicidal? Well, I don't know. We should ask. Yeah. And it's okay to ask. You're not going to put the thought into their head like, oh, well, now that you mention it. No, when you ask them, are you thinking about harming yourself? It shows them that you care and that you support them, and right, that you're going to help them work through that. And
kids want to talk, right?
They really do.
My 3-year-old, he does this thing all the time when he's like really emotional. He's not doing something he should be, and he goes, I need a chat. Mommy, I need a chat. Daddy, I need a chat. Yeah. Because he wants to talk.
Right.
He just doesn't know how.
Exactly. And I think kids really, for the most part, they, you know, I think they're afraid of letting us down, right? They're afraid of letting their parents down and disappointment. And if they're going through a hard time, I'm disappointing you because I'm not this perfect child. Mm-hmm. And I think that we need to make sure that they know that perfection is that's not a thing. It doesn't even exist. And we just want them to be happy and know that they're loved and supported. And, you know, we just want them to do things in life that bring them joy. And
the same thing that all adults want.
Yeah, exactly, right? We want to be heard, they want to be heard. So it's really just making sure that they know that they're heard and that they are seen, and being that person for them. And so that's probably my biggest hill to die on. If you walk away with anything from this,
I was going to ask you, so I'm glad you brought it up. What's the number one takeaway?
That would absolutely be it, is just really talk to your kids and talk to them often. Don't, I don't want it to be
just wait until
it's
happened.
Yeah, like all of a sudden they come home and they throw their books on the floor and they're stomping around, like they're having a really amazing day, they're in a really great mood, and that's when I'm really glad to see you're so filled with joy today. Tell me about that. How does that feel? What does that look like for you? And just talk to them. That's my thing.
As we wrap up, just a couple of more questions. Mm-hmm. You have a garden outside. Can you just tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I actually have 3.
Okay.
This is one of the 3. So I have one at Hess Hathaway Park, one here at the Waterford Library, and I have one at Calvary Lutheran Church in Clarkston. And it really started shortly after, about the end of 2020. So, the world was kind of a dumpster fire.
Something you could do without having to interact with people in person.
Exactly. And everybody just seemed to be very full of pain, right? I mean, everybody just, you don't know what's happening, and there's just so much pain going on in the world. There's so much sadness. There's just so much anger. There was just a lot of yuck, right? That's one of my favorite words, yuck. And my son, Nikolai, was such a joy-filled child until one day he wasn't. That's what I always say. But I wanted to bring joy back into the world. And the day that Nikolai died, soon after that, just the absolute sheer devastation. But soon after that, I just decided my new mantra was, I choose joy. So that's how I'm going to get through my day today, is I'm going to always choose joy. And not every day is joyful, not every minute is joyful, but there's always something to be joyful about if you recognize it and choose it. And so the Kindness Rock Gardens are really to bring joy back into the world. And it's also a way for us to share positivity with others, to let them know that they're loved, and to share it. So the rock gardens, anybody can paint a rock and put it in any of the gardens. And
that's cool.
Anybody can go to the rock garden and take a rock. So if you see a rock and it says, don't give up, and you are really in a place of not feeling so great and not sure that this world needed you anymore, and you see a rock that says don't give up and it speaks to you, I want you to take the rock home. So the rock garden should always turn over. I like
that idea.
So and it is really cool because even today, so stopping by there's all kinds of new rocks in there that weren't there last week when I was here.
Oh, cool.
So
people are doing it.
Yeah, so it's really awesome that our community has really embraced these rock gardens, and they paint and they bring rocks and they put them in the garden, and some of my favorites disappear, and that's awesome because that's what we want. We want people to take these rocks that speak to them. And we want them to share them. What if you saw a rock in there and you were like, oh my gosh, my friend needs this message. Mm-hmm. And then you share it with them as a gift, right? So that then you're also letting them know, hey, I recognize that you needed this, and I see you, and I just want you to let you know I'm here for you. So it's really it's all about spreading kindness and positivity and love in our community. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to go check it out. I know my wife has been listening to a lot of the podcasts. She doesn't listen to all of them because, we talk every day.
Right. Absolutely.
But she's an artist, and so she'll love it. Which park has the rock garden? Is it this one?
So it's Hess Hathaway Park
Okay,
has
the
it. The one
park
with the
has it.
farm. Yeah, so
Okay.
the one with the farm has it. And then
We go there occasionally anyway. My kids love the farm.
yeah, so, and every one is different. So that one actually is on the back of a maintenance garage. It's a huge garden and it has a resource library. So there's mental health resources instead of books. Like you see the little libraries, this one has a mental health library.
Okay.
And my husband actually is an artist and he painted the backdrop for it that says kindness.
Oh, cool.
So it's very cool. The library one is super special. My son is buried in the cemetery on the other side of the library.
Okay.
So it's kind of our connection. And the other piece too with the Kindness Rock Gardens, it is to bring mental health and suicide awareness also to the community. And so within each garden there's a pathway, and on the pathway there are stepping stones of those we have loved and lost to suicide.
Oh, wow.
So anyone can do a stepping stone and put it in the garden. So I think we have 4 or 5 out in the library one. We have, I think, 7 out in the Hess Hathaway garden. So the families decorate them themselves and bring them out, and it's just another place for them to go and memorialize, but it's also to...
It's probably healing in some way.
It is. And then hopefully too, as people walk through the garden and see all these messages and realize, you know, kind of that connection as well, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a question I ask everybody that comes on the show.
Okay.
And that it's an easy question.
I hope so.
Kind of. So the question is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't think to ask?
Oh gosh. I don't think so. We covered a lot. I
We
feel
did.
like.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah. I can't think of anything.
That's okay.
You did a great job.
Well, you did a wonderful job, and you know, getting your message out has been a privilege for me. And if you're listening, I really hope that this has made an impact. And if you know anybody that's struggling at all, you know, contact Kris. Her contact information, we'll have it in the show notes. Thank you for listening today. This has been another episode of the Safe and Sound Podcast with your host, Sean Sparkman. As always, I want to bring new, impactful people from all different walks of life to you so that you can gain something from this. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Safe and Sound Radio with Sean Sparkman. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic for future shows, contact Sean at 313-246-9278 or visit the website at www.safeandsoundretirement.net. That's www.safeandsoundretirement.net.
I must leave.